Welcome to this explainer. Okay, have you ever stopped and wondered where the modern world actually gets tested before it's, unleashed on the rest of us? The apps on your phone, the layout of your neighborhood, the public health policies you follow, they very likely started in one specific place. From groundbreaking public health discoveries all the way to the massive algorithmic surveillance systems of tomorrow, there is one specific geographic location that consistently acts as the world's petri dish. Today, we are exploring the absolutely fascinating concept of the English laboratory. We're going to trace its evolution from the cholera outbreaks of the 19th century right up to the artificial intelligence and data networks of the 21st century.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with a welcome to the laboratory, look at some wild physical experiments from the past, dive into the neoliberal testbed, explore our modern digital dystopia, and finally, look at what happens when these experiments get exported globally.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1. Welcome to the laboratory, the world's petri dish.
So, to really anchor our understanding today, we need to nail down the central sociological metaphor we'll be using, the social laboratory. Basically, a social laboratory is a geographic location, like England, or more specifically London, that serves as the primary testing ground for massive transformative movements, ideologies, or technologies before they go global. Because England was literally the first country to rapidly urbanize and industrialize, it organically became this huge guinea pig for modern social problems, and of course, the solutions that followed. The renowned historian E.P. Thompson absolutely hit the nail on the head here. He wrote, "England is the country where the transition from a traditional to a modern society occurred in its most complete and classic form." It's absolutely fascinating, right? Scholars are constantly looking at the UK for this exact reason. It's this organic, sometimes totally chaotic testing ground where the future just kind of arrives early.
Moving on to Section 2, the physical experiments, and how humanity started urbanizing. If we look at the historical timeline of how England tested the physical limits of its citizens, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. Back in the mid-18th century, the Midlands and the North gave birth to the Industrial Revolution, which literally set the stage for global industrialization. Then, jump to 1854, and we see this massive leap in public health when Dr. John Snow mapped out cholera in London's Soho district. Fast forward another century to 1964, and you've got sociologist Ruth Glass coining the actual term gentrification while she was watching class shifts happen in Islington.
Let's zoom in on that 1854 cholera outbreak for a second, because this is honestly the world's very first major data science hit. Back then, the expert medical consensus was that cholera spread through miasma, which just meant bad air. But Dr. John Snow, he tested a totally different hypothesis using what we now call geospatial analytics. First, he meticulously mapped out every single cholera death on a Soho street grid. Second, he spotted a stark cluster right around the Broad Street water pump. And third, in what is basically the ultimate analog tech fix, he just removed the pump handle. Boom, the outbreak stopped. He used data mapping to completely override the experts and firmly establish London as a global lab for epidemiology and public health.
Decades later, London's chaotic, totally unplanned growth made it the perfect testbed for another physical experiment, gentrification. Thanks to its incredibly unique inner-city Victorian housing stock, London became the original laboratory for testing what happens when middle-class professionals basically invade working-class neighborhoods. It was this massive organic market experiment, born right out of the city's architecture, that ended up fundamentally changing urban planning models everywhere.
Which brings us to Section 3, the neoliberal testbed, and a major ideological shift. So the really crucial point here is that even when certain concepts aren't entirely British in origin, England is very often where they get fully unleashed first. Take neoliberalism, for example. The term itself was actually coined in Paris back in 1938, and its intellectual roots go back to Austrian and American thinkers. But it was Margaret Thatcher's England that served as the very first total national experiment for the ideology. The UK applied these economic principles way more aggressively than anywhere else at the time, testing the absolute limits of this shift on a nationwide scale.
And that brings us to a massive pivot in our story. For the 19th and 20th centuries, England functioned as a lab, testing the biological and physical limits of the citizen, through industrialization and that chaotic urbanization we talked about. But here, in the 21st century, the laboratory has evolved. It is now actively testing our digital and algorithmic limits.
Let's jump into Section 4, the digital dystopia, where Huxley and Orwell are realized.
Think back to those dystopian novels you probably had to read in high school. It's actually a striking reality that some of the most prophetic ideas came from English intellectuals, specifically Aldous Huxley and George Orwell. Today, their concepts, mass surveillance, engineered compliance, technological control, they're becoming increasingly visible in the UK's modern digital landscape. England isn't just the birthplace of these literary dystopias anymore, it is actively testing the very infrastructure that mirrors them.
A prime example of this is mass manipulation through social networks. Now, while data-driven campaigning definitely started in the US, it was a British firm, Cambridge Analytica, that pioneered the really granular social media manipulation techniques we see today. Because of this, analysts often point to the Brexit referendum as the first time these scaled information operations successfully flipped the status of a major Western democracy. It essentially served as a massive test of digital persuasion on an entire national population. Now, what's really interesting about this next number is just how staggering it is. 691,000. That is the estimated number of CCTV cameras expected to be operating in London by 2026. I mean, just imagine walking down a street where there's roughly one camera for every 13 people. London has basically evolved into a living prototype for the surveillance city. And on top of that, the Metropolitan Police have pioneered the use of live facial recognition, literally using the physical streets of London as a testbed for AI that can identify individuals in real-time crowds. And this level of monitoring also extends right into personal data. The UK's National Health Service holds a cradle-to-grave medical record for over 60 million people. That is arguably the most valuable health data set on the planet. Recently, a £330 million contract to manage this NHS federated data platform was awarded to Palantir, a defense technology firm. Now, reports indicate this could grant staff unlimited access to identifiable patient records. Observers are pointing out that this makes the UK the very first nation to hand over a unified national health database to a private defense contractor, which tests a profound fusion of corporate and state resources. This precise dynamic is exactly what modern scholars are calling techno-feudalism. It's a fascinating and maybe somewhat chilling concept. It's a system where private digital lords extract value from public data, effectively turning the state's most valuable assets into a testbed for private power. Right now, the UK is widely regarded as the absolute gold standard laboratory for testing how private AI infrastructure can actually control and manage public services. Finally, let's look at Section 5, exporting the experiment, and what happens next. So, let's distill the key takeaways from the historical pattern we've been exploring today. What gets tested in the English laboratory is inevitably exported to the rest of the world. We saw it with global industrialization. We saw it with modern epidemiology and data science, thanks to Dr. John Snow. We've seen it with urban gentrification models, and more recently, we're seeing it with scaled information operations, mass surveillance, and the complex infrastructure of techno-feudalism. Basically, England runs the prototype, and the globe eventually adopts the final product. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If London is the laboratory, what actually happens when the experiment goes global? The systems being refined in the UK today, from real-time AI facial recognition to the private management of national health data, these are the blueprints for tomorrow's global societies. So keep your eyes on the English laboratory because it's showing us exactly where the rest of the world is heading. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay curious.
Getting to the heart of the matter isn't always easy, but here we always look for the essence. Thank you for your time and your curiosity. Subscribe for more answers, and as always, thanks for watching.